Look at this baby. Hello. He doesn't want to be here.
Hi guys, it's me Daphne and welcome to my series. I read the book so you don't have to. The first book we will be discussing in this series is The Holographic Universe by Micheal Talbot. The book suggests that reality is fundamentally interconnected beneath the surface, meaning that what we experience as reality may be partly constructed by consciousness and perception, aka our brain constructs reality rather than passively observing it. The author proposes this theory based on pre-existing ideas from physics, psychology, and neuroscience to suggest how telepathy, lucid dreaming, miraculous healing, synchronities, and such phenomena work. The book is very interesting, but it is also quite an academic and complex read, so I will be explaining it in a way that actually makes sense. As the book is divided in 3 parts, I will be making 3 videos. It all began with how memories are stored in the brain. In the early 1940s, the accepted view was that our memories were located in a specific place in the brain, as research in the 1930s by Walter Penfield provided evidence that memories are stored in the temporal lobe. Penfield operated on conscious patients. Now keep in mind that the brain itself does not feel pain directly, so if local anesthesia is applied to the scalp and skull, surgery can be done while the patient is still awake. So what Penfield did is he electrically stimulated different regions of the brain to see which would activate memories, and what he noticed was that when the temporal lobe was stimulated, the patients would relive episodes from their past in vivid details. Hence, after this experiment, it was believed that the temporal lobe stored our memories. However, 6 years later, a young neurosurgical intern called Carl let's call him Little P. Little P went to work with Carl. No, sadly not that Carl. This one was called Carl Lashley, and he was a neuropsychologist, not a cheating divorce lawyer. Well, he wasn't a lawyer. I can't say for sure whether he was or he wasn't a cheater. Anyways, Little P went to work with Carl. Carl trained rats to perform various tasks while navigating mazes. Then he surgically removed portions of their brains and tested them again, aiming to cut out the part of the brain that contained the memory of learning how to get through the maze. Yes, I know. This is literally animal cruelty. But unfortunately, as we all know, back in the 1940s, the rights of animals, women, the LGBTQ community, people of different skin colors, okay, basically everyone who was not a privileged white man didn't really have rights. Luckily, nowadays we have ethical guidelines and rules against such cruelty to people or animals. Is it always followed? Probably not. Do I want to know the type of cruel experiments people are conducting nowadays? Also not. The findings of the rat maze experiment were that no matter which part of the brain was removed, the memory of the maze was still there, even though the motor skills were definitely impaired. Hence, Little P concluded that engrams, aka the physical traces of memories, made of what we believe to be groups of neurons, were distributed throughout the whole brain rather than being localized in a specific area. So it's like sprinkles on a cake. They're everywhere on the cake, not just in one piece. Some years later, in the 1960s, Little P read an article about the first construction of a hologram, and this blew his mind. He was completely fascinated. But to understand his fascination, we have to first understand holograms. Now, this was quite complicated for me to get at first, but after drawing it 1,000 times, I finally got it. Okay, so we have a laser, a semi-transparent mirror, 2 lenses, the object, in this case it's an apple, and then the photographic plate. So the laser produces a beam which, when it hits the semi-transparent mirror, splits into 2 beams. This is the object beam, which basically passes through the lens, and then it goes to collect the information from the object. So this is size, depth, shape, etc. Meanwhile, beam 2 hits the mirror and then it bounces back and it passes through the lens and it goes here to the photographic plate. This is the object beam, this is the reference beam. So after the object beam goes to the object, it collects all the information and then it projects it on the photographic plate. Meanwhile, the reference beam passes through the lens and it goes to the photographic plate. And on the photographic plate, the two beams intersect, hence creating the image, well, the hologram of the apple. I really hope that makes sense. I'm really sorry if I wasn't able to explain it well. And this intersection of the two beams, where they overlap to produce the image of the apple, is called an interference pattern. Think of interference patterns like ripples in water. When you throw a pebble into the pond, it forms ripples. And when you throw two stones at the same time, it forms ripples that overlap each other. So when this interference pattern happens and light shines through the screen correctly, your brain sees a full-on 3D image floating there. Pretty cool, I would say. I get why Little P was like, "What? I love this." What he found the most interesting, however, was that the holographic film contains the whole image. So even if we are projecting an image of an apple that is cut in half, each half of the hologram apple will still contain the image of the whole apple. And even if you cut the apple in smaller pieces, each holographic film will contain all of the needed information to produce the entire image. And so Little P was like, wait a minute.
Wait a damn minute.
What if this is how memory works? Maybe every part of the brain contains the whole information needed to reconstruct an entire memory. He then theorized that what if it's not just memory that's holographic? What if vision is also holographic?
But how could vision be holographic? I'll tell you.
Carl had discovered that the visual center is also very resilient to surgical removal. Even after removing 90% of the rat's visual cortex, they could still perform visually complex tasks. So Little P was like, hey, let me try something on a cat. Why? As a cat lover myself, I was not happy at all when I read it, but whatever. He found out that even after severing 98% of the cat's optic nerves, which is basically what tells our brain what we are seeing, it did not impair the cat's ability to carry out difficult visual tasks. This is like a whole movie theater of people enjoying a movie even after 90% of the screen is removed. Seems crazy, right? Additionally, the idea at the time was that when you, for example, see a square, like my face shape, the electrical activity in the visual cortex also assumes the shape of a square. So Little P was like, hey, let me test that. He did experiments using monkeys for years. What he did basically was measure their brain's electrical activity while performing visual tasks. And what he found out was that there was not, in fact, a recognizable pattern in the order in which electrodes fired. Hence, Little P concluded that if the visual cortex was also so amazingly resilient, then vision, like memory, was distributed throughout the whole brain. So Little P was like, well, vision also seems to be holographic. If the brain processes images using some kind of internal hologram system, then even a tiny piece of the hologram, aka the brain, could reconstruct the entirety of what our eyes see. So he was like, what wave-like phenomenon could the brain use to create those kind of internal holograms? Scientists already knew that electrical signals do not travel independently. Instead, they jump from the synapse to the dendrite of the neuron. If you've never seen an image of a neuron, it basically looks like a little tree that's laying down on the ground. You have the branches, which are the dendrites, then you have the body, and then you have the roots, which are the axon terminals that contain synaptic bulbs. So the electrical signal travels from the branches to the body and then to the roots, aka the synapse. And then it goes to the other trees, branch, body, synapse, branch, body, etc. And Little P did not see them as signals, instead he saw them as electrical ripples that overlap each other. And since overlapping waves naturally created interference patterns, the brain might contain an almost endless kaleidoscope of interference patterns which he thought could provide the base for its holographic properties. In 1966, he published his first paper of the possible holographic nature of the brain, and he continued to develop and refine his idea over the years. John von Neumann, a mathematician and physicist, calculated that during an average human's lifetime, the brain stores approximately 2.8 times 10 to the 20th power bits of info. And now I think that even those of us, like me, who are not blessed with a mathematical brain, can still understand that this is a very, very, very big number. So little P was like, OMG, this is like a hologram. Because both the brain and a hologram store so much information and images on the same surface. Like,
Slay! Slay!
a single square inch of a holographic film could contain as much information as 50 Bibles. Now, I grew up an atheist, later became a witch, so I never had any interest in reading the Bible, nor did I ever read it. But I still do know for a fact that it is very, very long. So a single square inch of a film containing as much as 50 Bibles, it's insane. Another thing that Little P found out was that holograms could actually recognize patterns and compare objects using light. Like it sees a face, then it sees a familiar face. And it's like, hold on a second, you guys look similar. Are you sisters? Twins? Nothing? Okay. It was sort of like early facial recognition technology. You know, the face IDs that we have on our phones? That. So Little P was like, okay, wait, if that's true, what if the brain takes waves and sensory information and then transforms this into the reality that we experience? Hence, reality is not as solid and as objective as we think it is, but instead it's a projection from deeper hidden patterns in the universe. And if the universe is also structured holographically, as we will talk about in a minute, then the brain itself isn't just perceiving reality, it's actively creating it. While Little P was doing his thing, physicist David Bohm arrived at a similar conclusion via physics, quantum physics. The thing that got David going was the strange behavior of subatomic particles. You see, the biggest problem in physics at the time was that quantum mechanics implied that particles could somehow remain mysteriously connected across very large differences. And no, I don't mean miles apart. I mean they are light years apart. Yet the change in one particle instantly influences the other particle. How could this happen? Einstein legit said that this is spooky action at a distance, because he thought that nothing can travel faster than light. So how could this possibly work? And many experiments later, this mystery was not figured out, but it was confirmed that quantum particles did in fact act like that for real. So David was like, okay, well, it seems that they aren't actually separate objects then, are they? So David proposed that separation itself is actually an illusion. He proposed a simple idea. Reality contains two levels. Level 1 is the explicit order. This is the reality that we know. People, objects, space, time, planets, dogs, cats. You get the point. Level 2 is the implicit order. This is a hidden level, or reality, that is beneath the visible world we see. In this world, everything is connected and there is no separation. What appears separate in our reality is actually one thing in the other reality. So David started thinking that maybe the world functions similarly to a hologram. The way a hologram creates a 3D image from hidden interference patterns, physical reality may actually emerge from deeper information structures beyond ordinary perception. So solid objects aren't truly separate and individuality may be an illusion. Everything fundamentally arises from one underlying field. He also believed that consciousness worked the same way. He proposed that the mind and matter may both emerge from the same deeper reality, and consciousness woven into the fabric of existence itself. Hence, the division between the observer and the observed
may not truly exist. David's idea actually aligns surprisingly well with Little P's holographic brain theory. You see, if the brain operates holographically, and the universe itself is holographic, then perhaps consciousness interacts with reality through shared holographic principles. This means that the separation between the mind and matter could be only an appearance, created by the way that humans perceive the world. David thought that humanity suffers because people think in fragments, dividing everything into separate categories and forgetting the deeper unity underneath. If humans understood the hidden wholeness of reality, it could change how we think about science, nature, consciousness, and even human conflict. The holographic model suggests that every part of reality could contain the whole, just like every small piece of a hologram still contains the entire image. He believed that modern science, modern at the time, was beginning to discover the same ideas that many ancient spiritual traditions have described for centuries. In many spiritual traditions, the physical world is seen as an illusion, or only as a surface layer hiding deeper unity. David thought that quantum physics were pointing towards a similar conclusion. He argued that what we call reality is created partly by the way that our minds organize experience. For example, we normally think of time as moving in a straight line from the past, present, to the future. But in the implicate order, the hidden reality, time may not work this way at all. The present, past, and future are coexisting at the same time, together in the deeper layer of reality. And this also applies to space. Things that appear far apart in our reality may actually be very close together in the implicate order. This could explain strange quantum effects, where particles instantly affect each other across large distances. David also believed that randomness may not actually exist. Instead, events that seem accidental could actually be part of deeper hidden patterns that we as humans cannot normally see. In this view, the universe is not a chaotic battlefield, but instead it's highly organized, however enfolded beyond ordinary perception. And just like a hologram, each region of space may contain the whole pattern of reality. The author then proposes that this model may help to explain mysterious experiences, aka the paranormal, that traditional science struggles to understand, including telepathy, mystical experiences, altered states of consciousness, and other unusual phenomena. The holographic model suggests that we humans are actually much more deeply connected to each other and the universe than we normally realize. If the universe is holographic, then the brain does not create consciousness simply by itself. Instead, the brain works more as a receiver or decoder of a deeper reality. And just like a holographic film, every part of the consciousness may be connected to a larger universal mind or field. Because of this hidden connection, experiences that seem impossible in the ordinary realm may sometimes actually occur naturally. For example, telepathy could be happening because our minds are not actually separate in the implicate order, that second hidden layer of reality. Mystical experiences could occur when a person accidentally goes beyond ordinary perception and experiences the deeper unity of all things directly. According to this view, consciousness is not isolated inside each person. Human minds could be connected through a deeper layer of the implicate order. In Hinduism, Buddhism, and other spiritual systems, reality is often described as an interconnected unity hidden behind the world of appearances. The author then explains that the holographic model is important because modern physics and ancient spirituality appear to be moving towards similar conclusions. In a hologram, changing one small part can affect the entire image, because the whole pattern exists everywhere within it. Likewise, in a holographic universe, even small events can influence larger systems in ways that humans do not fully understand. Nowadays, we call this the butterfly effect. A person may appear separate physically, but at deeper levels, consciousness may remain connected to all other consciousness, which, now this is my personal interpretation, could explain mother's intuition and how you can literally be on a different continent from your mom, yet when something bad happens, she suddenly gets the gut feeling to text you and ask you if you're okay. Maybe mother's intuition is just two consciousness being connected in the hidden layer of reality. And since she literally created the child from herself and her consciousness, she is more intact with that connection. The author proposes that this could explain why we sometimes not only experience sudden intuition, but also emotional connections while being miles apart. Well, this was a lot for one video. If you're still here, thank you for watching. Next time we will continue with part 2 of the book, which begins connecting psychology to spiritual experiences. And you will find yourself falling down the rabbit hole. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, remember to hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more. Love you!